Right. Dr. Suneth. Now, see, I was surprised, there is a doctor who talks so much about in mental health. When I did a small research, it was so interested. There's so much things you can give it back. And we were debating how we can work together, help the men who need their support. So, doctor, what challenges do men face in seeking mental health support compared to women?
Right. Firstly, Mr. Amit, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And your question, the answer is quite complex. It's many layers. It's what society expects of men, because the expectations are so high. And we've been, even my generation, the junior generation, we've been brought up in this community or in this society where men should internalize everything. Men should be tough. You have phrases like "you cry like a girl." That inherently means that men can't cry, right? And men are looked down upon for expressing their emotions, for releasing them, rather. So when you don't release emotions, it becomes very toxic. It builds up inside. And that can lead to complex behavioral changes. We've seen that happening. And that's why it's very important for men to emote, or rather be, at least at the very least, accept their emotions. And the problem here is society's expectations of men and the same standards, or the false standards rather, that men set for themselves also. Because again, it's part of social media as well, where society expects men to be at a certain level, and when men don't meet those expectations, they tend to lock themselves in, because it's easier not to expose your insecurities, inadequacies, rather than be called out for it. And this culture in itself needs a paradigm change. I'll touch upon something that you said actually, Asas, about the fact that women have been celebrated for a long time than men have. To give you an idea, this is partially because men don't, until the problem becomes really, really bad, men tend to ignore things until it becomes malignant. And to give you a simple idea of, to give an example of this, now the breast cancer movement has been happening since the 1980s. That's the pink ribbon of what I'm wearing right now. So the men's health movement, or the November movement, was taken seriously only after 2012. There's a 30-year gap between when breast cancer was suddenly, made aware of and all these activities started, and when men's health, and enough men had to die of prostate cancer for it to be recognized like, there's a problem, right? So this is, to answer your question, it's at many layers. It needs to happen from society's point, from that end, from men themselves who need to learn to accept themselves at the very core, and be more in touch with their feelings and not be ashamed of emoting. Men can cry. I always say this, men can cry. There's nothing saying that you can't. I hate this phrase like you run like a girl or you cry like a girl, right? Crying and, feminine things aren't only for females. Because when you do that, when you create these boundaries, you end up with a society where, there's a lot of internalized hurt, there's a lot of internalized damage. The problem with that is that comes out in later generations. You might pass that on to your children. You never know. What you don't put out, you put out in different ways, Sometimes you may put that out as negativity towards your children. You might put that out in ways where your child, if you look at it, we are all in a way replicas of our parents to some extent, right? And we pick up their positive and negative traits. And if we see poor men, or if we see inadequate men in our fathers, we tend to become that. So that's where the danger lies. You perpetuate it. That's where we need to change this. And this is why I'm very, very happy you started this conversation.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you.